Welcome back. We've got a video here that I've been asked to do for a very long time and I've been promising and I have not done it yet. So here I am doing it now. It's all about how to mix colors to match a reference photo. It's something that beginner artists struggle with. They'll often paint with colors straight out of the tube. So they'll see this blue and they'll just go straight in with a blue. If you're going for realism, I think one of the biggest things you can do to help you get your paintings to look more realistic is to get really good at color matching to a reference photo. It's huge. It's a big deal. It's like my #1 tip for getting your paintings to look more realistic, if that's what you're going for. You don't have to have your paintings look more realistic, but if you're going for realism, that's what you do. So here, I've got a couple things. Oh, there's a bug. There's a bug. Okay, here we've got a couple things. I've got a palette to mix on, obviously. I've got this palette knife. I've got some colors here, and I've got my reference photo printed out. So my colors here are magenta, Windsor Red Deep, Indian Yellow, Cerulean Blue, and Ultramarine Blue, and Titanium White. So you don't have to have the exact colors that I have here. I like these colors because I've used them for a while, but really, especially if you're just starting out, you can use any old generic red, any old generic yellow. I like to have 2 different kinds of blue, a bright blue and a deeper blue, just because it helps me get colors a little more accurate. And if you're doing anything pink, I really like to have a magenta around. Adding just white to red doesn't really make the pinks that I want to be using. So magenta is important, for me at least. Here we have our reference photo. You do not have to have your reference photo printed out. I'm kind of doing it for the convenience of the video. I often use reference photos that are just on my computer screen or on my phone or on my iPad. Sometimes that's more difficult for beginners because the backlighting and the glare of screens can make it a little more difficult to produce accurate colors when you're mixing. But I almost never print out my photos. I've heard people be like, always print out your reference photos. I almost never do it. So if you're currently using a reference photo that's on your screen, don't worry about it. That's totally fine. I just sneezed. It's not coming. Oh, the agony. Okay, real quick before we get into actual mixing of these colors here, I want to talk about the color wheel. It's something you've definitely seen before. You know, it's all the rainbow colors right in a circle. I'm putting a photo of it right here. This is something that is so simple that has made such a huge difference for me in my painting and getting my colors to look more accurate to my reference photos. If you know the color wheel, or if you're looking at a picture of the color wheel, you can see what colors are complementary to each other. So that's exactly across from each other. Those colors can help mute each other down. So for example, let's mix up a quick little orange. I'm gonna take a little bit of yellow, I'm gonna take a little bit of red. Woo, that got very red. I'm gonna add a little more yellow and I'll add a little bit of white just so we can see that it's orange. So that's orange, and that is bright orange. Oh my goodness, that is such a bright orange. And maybe the color that we're going for is not so vibrant. What I can do is look at the color wheel, see what color's across from orange, which is going to be blue, take a tiny bit of that, add it to my orange color, and it helps it become just a little more muted, not so loud of an orange. You see that there? I'm going to do it again with a little more. Definitely more muted. Obviously not going to use that color for our painting. I'm going to set it over here, and I'm going to clean this up. I want to do one more quick example with green, so let's mix up green real quick. There's our green. So the opposite of green on the color wheel is red. So we'll take a little bit of red, lay it down in there. I think, wait, hold on. Yes, okay, I was right. Put a little green in there, mix that around, and this green has just been significantly muted down. So let's start trying to mix in these colors that are on our little reference photo here. The first step that I take when I am trying to reproduce a color from a reference photo is I'll try and pick the closest color I think that's just straight out of the tube to whatever I'm trying to go for. So if I want to do this like darker blue here, I think the closest I have is my ultramarine blue. So I'm going to take some of that. Obviously, this is much, much darker than what I'm going for. So we're going to tint it with white. Mix in some white in there. When you're mixing in white, I would recommend doing tiny little bits at a time because it's very easy to suddenly add too much white. If you do add too much white, you can always go back in and grab more of your pure color. It's not quite looking right still. It's almost too purpley. So what we can do is look at what's across from the color wheel, which would be orange. So I got my orange that I just mixed up, and I'm gonna take a tiny bit of it, mix that in. It's looking like a little too purpley. I'm gonna add a good bit more. I really think that taking a lot of time to get your colors perfect, if you're going for realism, is super important. And if you end up messing up, you went too dark or you went too light, feel free to scrap it entirely and just go for a whole new color. Right. So let's see where we're at. I think I might have muted it a little too much. I think the tint is close to where I want it to be, but I'm gonna add a little bit of this. And I noticed that some of these blues are a little more vibrant, so I think I'm gonna add a little bit of this guy too. I think I might have started with too much white. Like I said I was gonna, I knew I was gonna. It's looking a lot closer. So let's take this, set it aside. I always like to clean up my palette before I start mixing the next color. So after we made that one, I see here we've got this like brighter blue, which I think is closer to this one here. So I'm gonna start mixing that color next. It's definitely lighter, so I'm gonna take a little bit of white. Still too green. You know what? I think I'm gonna scrap it. This is honestly a really good thing to do. If your color is not turning out the way you want it to, scrap it. It's gone. Beautiful. So I'm gonna start with more of this time. A little bit of this. And then add some white. More white, because it's definitely lighter. Obviously still looking like a little too purple for that color. So let's mute it down with our orange. Getting closer, but I do think it needs a little bit of this vibrant cerulean in there. There we go. Cha. So now let's go for this pink color we have here. Pinks can be tricky, so be super patient with pinks. I'm actually gonna start out with the color white because this is such a light color. And then I'm gonna add a tiny bit of my magenta. Obviously looking a little too purpley. We're gonna wanna warm it up. So I'm gonna do that with my red, a tiny bit of red. Add that in there, making it a little bit peachier. I'm thinking still a little more red. Whoops, too much red. Way too much red. Sometimes if you go too hard on a pigment, I'll scrape out like half of it, set it to the side, add back in white, and see how that goes. That's looking much better. Put that there. Sometimes too we'll have reflections of a color in water or in other places, but you'll see that this is a lot darker and muddier. So I might take some of this leftovers and I want to make it a little more muted. I'm going to take a little more that and a little more of that. Oh, I'm using just the tiniest little amounts to make it a little more vibrant. I'm gonna look at what's across from pink in the color wheel. So there isn't actually a pink because it's a tint of red and magenta. So I'm gonna look at what's across from red and magenta, which is green and a lighter green. And I'm gonna make that color real quick. I'm gonna put in the tiniest little amount of this green right in there. And that is looking much closer to that color that's reflected in the water. Ta-da! Also, when you're mixing colors, say you've got a sky color, and I've noticed this sky color is very similar to our lighter highlight blue, and also the water has some lighter blue colors. It's pretty easy when you have gradients or colors that are reflected but look a little lighter to just take some of whatever the parent color is and just add a little bit of white. There we go, having a color that's much closer to these other highlights and this mid color of the sky. And if you want to go even lighter, like that bottom color of the sky, that's a very handy trick that I use when I'm mixing. So there you go. That's a quick overview of how to color match using that complementary color meeting technique. It has helped me so much in my painting. You have no idea. I understood color and painting once I learned this trick. So if you have any questions, let me know. Throw them in the comments below. I can always do a follow-up video if there's things that I missed or more things that people have questions about. If you guys want another example with maybe a photo that's more green heavy or that's more orange heavy or more purple heavy, let me know. I can totally do that. And I see you in the next video.